I want to pull up this story we have here from The Hill. Biden says if medical team advises it, he'll issue domestic travel vaccine requirement. Now, Joe Biden is elected, but this what you were just talking about how there's unelected, bureaucrats. I think another issue here is that there's rule by edict. So with these vaccine mandates in New York, it's an executive who just says, I'm going to do it without approval of the courts, without the legislature, legislative body. This is what we're getting now across the board. People like Biden threatening domestic travel requirement or domestic travel vaccine mandates. They're basically saying, we're going to do this anyway. And then it will get a good 3 months before the courts actually intervene and do anything about it. So it's rule by decree. Aside from, like the Senate parliamentarian and other issues, we are just continually getting governors, mayors, and the president doing whatever they want. And there seems to be no recourse or opportunity for a redress of grievances.
Well, Fauci just came out and said it the other night. He was just like, look, if it basically gets more people vaccinated, then it's a good thing at the end of the day.
Yeah, he admitted the mandates are just kind of a way to manipulate people to get vaccinated.
Totally against the Nuremberg Code.
Exactly.
Instantly. But he said it out loud.
He said it was a mechanism. It was just a mechanism.
It's a mechanism.
It's not for your safety. It's not for your health. It's not for your well-being. It's not for you to look out. It's for you to buy a product.
Mm-hmm. Not a violation of the Nuremberg Code.
No?
No.
That's not true?
The Nuremberg Code that people are referring to states that you have to consent to participate in a trial study. And so the argument is that because they're still doing long-term trials on the vaccine, no one's consent. You're literally consenting to it.
The argument,
I understand the vaccine mandates basically are coercing people into doing it. So that's the gray area. I just want to clarify, I suppose. When you have an emergency use authorization for a vaccine, it's not in the same territory as putting a human being in a laboratory setting. And then, you know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to clarify. There you go.
Well, the argument that I heard is that coercion is a strike against that, because if you're coercing people to participate in that kind of environment, then it's also against the Nuremberg Code, because that is coercion.
Yeah.
If you can't travel and you have to get this forced shot, then that's coercion to participate in a medical experiment.
You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and say I stand corrected on that one. You know why? First, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you if it actually does violate the Nuremberg Code. But I'm gonna walk that back and just say, actually, you know what? That's a good point. The issue is that people, so long as there is phase, I think it's phase 2. What phase are we on? They're doing long-term trials right now. Actually says this on the FDA insert for
phase 2. I believe we're in right now.
So
no, we've done phase 2 trials.
Yeah. We're past that.
Phase 1 is safety. Phase 2 is efficacy. And
Yeah.
those were the trials that have been completed with 100,000 people or more.
The FDA insert for the Pfizer vaccine says long-term studies are still being done. So you're going to get people on the left saying it's EUA authorized. It's already gone through the safety trials, so it doesn't qualify in that capacity. People on the right are saying, well, as long as they are doing studies on it. I don't know, man. I kind of lean towards, I think it's a bit hyperbolic to say it violates the Nuremberg Code. Yeah. I don't know, man. This is all, look, I'll put it this way. We are polarized. We are completely polarized. There's different world views on what is happening. I'll just put it this way. The left will say it's EUA authorized. The studies have said it's safe, therefore, and the right's going to be like they haven't finished long-term studies, therefore.
Well, the New York Times came out with a bombshell article today talking about how some scientists are warning that too many shots could lead to people's bodies not being able to fight off COVID. That's not me saying it. That's the New York Times that literally wrote a piece about this, which again is breaking the narrative of what we were previously told and believed to by the medical
let me just
advisors.
Pull that one up just to show you. We New York Times is struggling to load.
And the byline is specifically the most important part here that people really need to read and to think about, especially in the context of everything that we were told. And
so go
to the byline.
There you go. I got it right here. Look. It says other experts argued that not enough was known about the effects of a fourth shot, and some scientists have raised concerns that too many shots might cause a sort of immune system fatigue, compromising the body's ability to fight the virus, particularly among older people. This is the New York Times reporting it. So I want to wrap it back up to what you were saying about Nuremberg. If we don't know, and they're already at the point where several countries have said a fourth shot for immunocompromised, I mean, now I think you're getting into you're starting to get into dangerous territory over what you're going to mandate people get.
So So from my understanding, from what I've just learned about the Nuremberg argument, part of the argument is based on the definition of coercion. Is that not correct? From my
That's
understanding.
what I've heard.
Yeah. So if you're gonna say that you can't travel, you can't shop, you can't go to the gym, you can't go to movies, that sounds like coercion to me. But I guess you would have to look up the definition and make sure that you're arguing on the same terms.
I think you could literally, if that was the definition of, you would be able to apply that to virtually like any approved drug.
That's
interesting.
I don't think exactly this kind of article, right, in the New York Times, this is assuming that people are adults and that this is a novel virus, that there are risks involved with it, that like this is treating people as adults. And the problem is that a lot of our public health institutions have not given people straight information. They have given people a narrative to try to manipulate them into behaving the way that they want at any given time. And that way changes, right? We saw like the changes over time with regard to masks, right? With regard to 1,000 other issues. I think that the problem is that we have not treated people as adults. And sure, some people are irresponsible, but that's kind of the price of freedom in this country, is that there are, people get to behave irresponsibly sometimes. But I think the problem is we have not treated American citizens as adults. We've been treated as pawns to try to like influence people, instead of just saying straight out, here's the information we have. It may change because this is a new virus. This is, here's the recommendations that we're giving because, we are studying this as experts and scientists. But the problem is the entire premise of trust for the expertise and that entire class of quote unquote experts and managerial class is shot.
Let's just be really clear. I just want to add to your point.
That wasn't a pun, by the way.
They haven't leveled with us. They haven't came out and said, hey, we don't know the data. We don't know the information. We're still collecting it. This is the informed consent that you guys are taking here. There's also, it's surprising to see the New York Times release this article because it is important. There are a lot of implications with those statements. And there's also a New York Times editor that died recently of a heart attack that a lot of people have questions surrounding. So this could be kind of, potentially the New York Times deciding to ask more questions after dealing with stuff internally.
Yeah, but look, we use mainstream news sources in a lot of our reporting. And all the information that we have, save like Project Veritas, is despised by the media, but I trust Project Veritas. But almost, I would say every single article we use, save like one or two, is NewsGuard certified, established press. And the information we get that talks about this stuff, it always comes from these sources. When we get an article about people being arrested in Burger King by NYPD, it's the New York Post. When we get stories about Hunter Biden, it's coming from the New York Post. We got a story about a Ukrainian court saying that Ukrainians were meddling in the election, and that was the New York Times that wrote that. Yeah. You've got to weed through the garbage from these sources. But my point is, like, you can find those the news in this, and we use it. So I'm just trying to say, like, I'm not surprised the New York Times wrote about this. It just depends on who's writing about it, I guess. But here's what I do want to say. We're talking about the Nuremberg Code and stuff, and I feel like that's probably a derailment. We don't even need to bring that up. We don't need to argue about whether or not it's a violation of some long-standing, code or law. What matters is coercing people into a medical practice is wrong, period. I don't care for what reason. I believe that if you walk up to somebody and you can see they got a swollen knee, and you're like, what this person needs? They need methylprednisolone. Is that what they would give for a
methylprednisolone?
Yeah, what is that?
I'm not sure what that is.
I think it's Oxycontin. They're probably going to give you that.
Steroid?
No, I don't know.
Google it for me.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
If you see somebody and you're like, you've got a swollen joint and you need some kind of steroid to anti-inflammatory for this, and they say no, I say okay.
Yep. That treats inflammation, severe allergies, flares of chronic illnesses, and many other medical problems.
You see, I was correct.
Yeah, you were correct.
So if I go up to somebody who's got like a busted knee and I say, you should, the doctor prescribes it, not me, take this methylprednisolone, and they say, I choose not to. Well, then they can say, okay. But if you go, nah, your knee's busted, no food for you, no movies, no restaurants, no flying, okay. That's where it's like, let's not get into the weeds on the weird, murky political stuff about Nuremberg or whatever, because we can just outright say it. Don't coerce people into taking medications.
Yeah. Or if you're obese, like imagine if you're obese or have an STD. Imagine implementing the same restrictions on individuals for those lifestyle choices. I mean, I don't envision a society like that. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So to me, I think the distinction then has to be, and I don't think you can avoid the whole discussion that way, because the distinction has to be things that injure yourself versus others, right? And now, especially in the last several months, it's become very, very clear that vaccinated people can pass this virus. And to me, that makes the argument for the other side much, much weaker. Because at the end of the day, I'm very pro-vaccine. I have my vaccines, but I think that at the end of the day, if it's not reducing transmission by any substantial degree anymore, then it becomes about, you're only hurting yourself. You're only taking your chances yourself. It's no longer an aspect of actually affecting anyone else, because it seems very, very clear at this point that you are not preventing other people from getting COVID by being vaccinated. What you're doing is making a decision about your own risk, which is ultimately an individual decision.
They would have to say testing mandates, because if you get vaccinated and you can still get it, and people are, like you were saying before the show, that people in New York all have Omicron. Like it's record breaking. There's like 50,000 cases or whatever, and it's bad. I mean, you saying people are like flat on their back, like, I'm sick.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a bad flu. I mean, I just got over it. I caught it at a dinner party. Happy birthday to me. It was my dinner. But all 7 people there were vaccinated. Every single person was exposed. The only person who didn't catch it, fortunately, or at least only had the sniffles, one person who was the most medically fragile. So I'm really, really glad that he did not. But everybody else got sick. It's very, very clear that this is not stopping it. So there's no justification now. There has to be some balance between, if you're affecting other people, this is sort of the negotiation of a liberal democracy, how much, the negotiation between the individual and the common good happens. There is no negotiation anymore, to my mind, if you are not reducing the infection rate in the general population by being vaccinated. There is no argument.
We've been hearing a bit in the media that it's milder. And there was one viral story saying it's like runny noses, but you were saying it's actually worse than that. Like Luke brought it up earlier. He said it's like mild, and then you said.
Well, I had friends who had it who just described it as a kind of runny nose, just like a cold. But that's my experiences. Your experiences are of course different.
That's not what I've seen in New York City, but obviously that's anecdotal. But I think
but worse
even for
than a runny nose.
Yeah, like flu. Like bad flu. Most people I know who caught it, it's a week or two in bed, high fever, feeling miserable. This is just anecdotal though. I can't. Right. I can't like.
I just thought that was interesting too, because before the show, Luke had mentioned it. Every anecdotal story I've heard on like Twitter is like, these people are saying I'm triple vaxxed and I was floored by this. And then I see people posting, images from news stories where it's like, it's not that bad, it's mild or whatever. I look, I don't know what we had. I'm assuming we had Delta when it came here. Worst sickness I've ever had.
Do you know?
I didn't think I was like, my life was on the verge of dying. I thought I was gonna be in the hospital, to be honest, though.
Yeah, you were in a very serious
and Ian
situation.
was bad too.
Yeah, Ian was bad as well. I was taking different stuff, but that's a different story. Do you know if your friends were specifically tested for a variant, or do they know which variant they had?
No, but I mean, at the time, it's pretty clear what's circulating in New York City. And it also the fact that there was still some transmission protection with Delta, and the fact that like every person that it has either 2 or 3 shots is catching this makes it seem much more likely that it's Omicron.
Well, New York City is one of the most vaccinated places in the world, and on December 26th, they had almost 25% of all cases in the United States presented here. And in South Africa, there's also a lot of preliminary data suggesting that this new Omicron variant is getting rid of the Delta variant and is creating a lot of people to have natural immunity. And then a lot of people are reporting that South Africa is on the up and up right now, and that they have reduced a lot of hospitalizations, a lot of admissions, a lot of deaths have fallen off completely in that country.
I think we're going to see a spike in the next few weeks in hospitalizations, even if it's much milder, which I actually do believe. I think some of the data from South Africa is not particularly helpful for the United States because we are older, fatter, and we have a totally different percentage of vaccinated people
South Africa has very little vaccination. So
the data that's coming in from the UK, I think, is probably more relevant to us. And there seems to be good reason to think this is substantially milder, and it's resulting in a smaller percentage of people going to the hospital or dying, but a smaller percentage of a very, very large number. If you are having 20,000 cases recorded a day, which means that the actual caseload is much higher than that, right? You're still going to see probably an increase in hospitalizations. I hope not, but I think you're right, though. I think after this, a lot of people will have natural immunity, which is something that is, for some reason, only America doesn't talk about natural immunity. European countries consider it's part of the policy calculation. Israel keeps it as part of the policy calculation. There's no reason other than bias and ideology, as far as I can tell, that natural immunity is not part of the conversation.
And no
in the
talking
United
about
States.
early treatment as well, which is ridiculous.
That's a big one.
Go ahead.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.